Welcome to today's leadership communication webinar. Today, we're going to talk about 3 techniques that you can implement starting today to increase your executive presence. So, you're here because you probably freeze a lot. And this happens to non-native speakers a lot. You probably feel frustrated that you know what you want to say, but you can't find the right words in the moment. And so this is something unique to the executive presence and leadership communication training for non-native speakers. Because the reason that this happens to you is different than it would to a native speaker. And that's why I do this kind of training, because when the root of the problem is different, the solution in the training, I believe, should also be different. Another reason you're probably here is because you wish you could express yourself as naturally as your colleagues. This can happen to you at any level of your professional journey. There's always going to be someone with better English than you, whether it's because you work with native speakers or maybe non-native speakers who've had different, better, more training than you in terms of English communication. And that can be really disappointing, especially because if you follow me, if you're here, you're probably a high achiever, you're probably a perfectionist. And so to constantly be reminded that you could or should be better can be very disappointing and demoralizing for your type of personality. But that's something that's really important in terms of the training that you receive, because to increase your executive presence and improve your leadership communication, you have to address these mindset blocks, these mindset issues, and find a way to have a more productive mindset in order to see the improvement that you need. Now, another reason that you're probably here is because you want people to understand you clearly. This is a struggle that non-native speakers face. Unfortunately, your heart's in the right place. You want to be understood clearly. What I find with my clients and with the people that I coach is that the way that you do it is not productive. In order for you to be understood clearly, you over explain. You sometimes this also translates into wanting to avoid people noticing your mistakes. So you might speak faster and thinking that sounds more natural, more like a native speaker, but it actually causes more confusion. So again, this is something unique to your journey in leadership and business English. And so this is something that requires a different kind of training. And you're also here because you wish you sounded as professional in English as you do in your native language. And that's a really big frustration that I feel. I keep saying this because this is why I'm here. It's unique to your experience. A lot of times with leadership communication for native speakers, it's more about the strategy or more about the theory. The reason I have this program and I do these trainings is because a lot of times what I find with the people that I coach is you're already a strong leader. Like you have the concepts, you have the knowledge and the theory from your experience in your native language, but it doesn't translate effectively when you're working with Americans. And that can have a lot to do with cultural communication, intercultural communication issues that you might not even know. There are certain things you might be doing because it's intrinsically part of your cultural communication that you don't realize are hurting your business communication in English. And if you don't know what the problem is, you won't find the right solution. So that's why I'm here. Now, a really good thing, hopefully, this makes you feel a little relief, is that you're not alone. I have worked with leaders and directors and executives at some of the top companies in the world. These are just a few that I'm putting up on the screen. And they are experiencing what we're going to talk about today. The issues that you are going through, I don't want you to feel it can be very isolating when you feel like, am I the only one who's going through this? Everybody else is better than me. But I really want to show you that I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I work with some of the best companies in the world, some of the most brilliant minds in the world, in my opinion, and they're having the same insecurities that you're dealing with. So not only is there a solution, not only will there be a way out and up, but other people have gone through this and it's going to be okay. So hopefully this brings a little bit of relief. I know I find relief when I realize, oh, if other people have gone through it, then other people have found a solution. So it's going to be okay. Now, executive presence, what does that mean? So if you're here, you already know what it means because that's why you want to get these skills. But executive presence for you as a non-native speaker, I find has an extra layer. And it really is, I equate it to leadership communication because a lot of it has to do with your relationship to language. And so for me, the way I break down my program is in these three sections. So executive presence has to do with speaking with confidence. And confidence is a big thing for you as a non native speaker because there are so many layers of the insecurity there. Communicating with clarity. This has to do a lot with what we talked about earlier. Well, how much is your culture affecting your communication? How much is your insecurity negatively impacting your communication? And connecting with authenticity. This is something that is really important because as non-native speakers, I find that people don't connect with people as much because there's a fear. There's also that doubt, like, what do I talk about? I know how to talk about work. I don't know how to talk about other things. There could be insecurities of you don't know the pop culture. You don't know the local interests. And so you feel a little bit left out and you avoid opportunities to connect. Not only is this isolating, but it's awful for your networking and for the growth of your impact and influence. So this is something I want to absolutely empower you to feel more confident to do. And one of the three techniques is about small talk today. So, with this in mind, I created this program, the Leadership Communication Accelerator. It's a 3-month program that's intensive and it's very much designed for you as a non native speaker. And this is what we're going to go through today. You're going to get techniques. They're going to help you start communicating more efficiently, effectively, clearly from this moment, as well as getting insight on how you can join this program and take it to the next level. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about, the first technique will relate to confidence. So, this is going to help boost your confidence and your fluency. The reason I have this quote first is because when you hear what the first thing is, it's going to sound obvious. However, I promise you, you're not doing it correctly. And the impact this has on your fluency and your confidence is huge. So, this is someone who went through my program. And because of this first tip that I'm going to share with you, it really helped her break through and speak up more confidently in meetings. And this person was very much in the position of being with other brilliant minds and in high pressure situations, things that it's not just talking, speaking up in meetings, it's speaking up and getting funding. It's speaking up and making a difference. So when she didn't, it really impacted her ability to do her job to the fullest. And so by implementing this first strategy, she was able to feel more confident in speaking up. Also, a thing that happens with non-native speakers is sometimes you speak too quickly. As I mentioned before, you do it either out of nervous, anxious energy, or you might do it because you think people won't notice your mistakes. This technique is going to help you slow down in a way that helps you speak more naturally and gather your thoughts and express yourself more clearly. And that technique is breathing. I told you it's going to sound obvious, but I promise you're not doing it the way you should. And it's impacting everything in your communication. So, the thing about breathing is the way that I train it and the way I want you to perceive it and really train it for yourself today, it's about being strategic. So, when you're told don't speak so quickly in English, like again, these are theories that you probably already know. The difference with training is that it's actionable. So, how do you stop speaking so quickly? So, when I mean strategic breathing for this solution, what you want to do is you want to not inhale, exhale. The trick is to inhale, just a tiny inhale, and then speak. And you want to do that either before every sentence or you want to do that before every thought, depending on how you're processing. And this makes a huge difference. In addition to helping you feel calm and really regulating the speed, it also helps your intonation feel more natural. And as you get deeper into the training, there are other moments where you learn where to have that strategic inhale, and that's going to help you really refine your American intonation and rhythm. But for today, at least try doing that little inhale. So, for example, instead of saying, "How are you today?" just inhale. "How are you today?" Try that before every time you speak, and you'll start. You want to do it consciously so you can do it without thinking later on. Now, another thing you probably get told, and I say this all the time, is don't answer right away. A lot of times I find that even at the highest positions, there's a part of you as a non native speaker that is trying to prove that you're good enough, that your English is good enough. Even though you already got the job, you're already in that position. There's always a little bit of insecurity of, is my English good enough? Could I be replaced with someone who's a native speaker or speaks better English? And I find that the result is you try to respond faster. And whether it's trying to prove yourself that you're a solution or that you can answer it faster, or from a language perspective, it's not effective. It actually makes you sound and seem more insecure. So, what you want to do is, again, strategic breathing. Breathe. It could be just an inhale. In this case, you can inhale, exhale, but I actually recommend inhale and then say, well, or use a filler that sounds more professional. You don't want to say, but I find well is a good one. So, for example, if someone says, what should we focus on next quarter? Instead of immediately replying, we need to focus on production. You're a leader. People are listening to you. You want to be trusted. And in order to be trusted and taken seriously, how you respond is a big deal. So instead, if someone asks, what are we going to focus on next quarter? Well, I believe that focusing on production would be best. It's a tiny change, but it buys you more time to gather your thoughts. It helps your heart relax a little bit, and it makes your answer seem more confident, because it is confident because you know what you're talking about, but your language insecurities are hurting the way that you speak, and that makes people doubt your expertise. People aren't doubting your English. That's the problem and why I do this kind of training, because what you're doing is making people doubt your knowledge and expertise. And that's the thing you are probably the most secure about. Next would be don't slouch. Slouching is when you have bad posture. Breathing really helps because I see a lot of executives, especially in virtual meetings, they're down here. And I look at these because part of my training is I have you submit yourself in meetings. And I see this just like shrinking. And it's not even just non-native speakers, also native speakers. But again, you're here to be better than what you are. So when you take a deep breath, your posture is up. I always have an extra pillow behind me to help push myself down here so that I don't fall into that comfort position. And I'm always taking up space because I know that that helps exude confidence and helps you appreciate my knowledge and take me more seriously. So, the solution to body language is breathing. Another thing that I coach is I always do 3, 2, 1. It's this technique to calm down. And part of that is to breathe and bring your posture in this confident position. Because a lot of times, my goal is to help you look, feel, and sound more confident. But sometimes you won't feel confident. And in those moments, I still want you to look and sound confident. Whether you don't feel it because you're tired, you had a bad night, maybe you're extra nervous about your English, whatever the case is, there's always a workaround. Because as a leader, you can't afford to have an off day. And I want to make sure you have the tools to be there for your team and for your company. Another thing that you've probably been told is don't feel overwhelmed. You need to decrease your anxiety. Sure, great. Great advice, but how do you do this? And so with strategic breathing, this is something that's going to help you decrease your anxiety. Again, one of the methods I teach is 3, 2, 1. So I'll teach it to you now. You're going to massage your ears in 3 spots, kind of like rub and pull a little lightly for 2. So it's 3. 2, you're going to go up 1, down 2, and 1 breath. I my people to do this before every meeting. When you wake up, you want to make it a habit. And I do it. I did it before this webinar because what it does is it helps your body get in the moment. That's what the ear thing is. Give you confident posture so you look confident and calm, even if you don't feel it. And slow your heart rate. When your heart rate is more regulated, you feel less anxiety. So this is strategic breathing. And last but not least, don't plan in your head. As a non-native speaker, this is something that I find after you get out of the habit of translating. So once you finally stop translating in your head, the next step, I'll call it a bad habit that happens. I understand why you do it, and that's okay. But we don't want to keep doing it is you plan what you want to say in English in your head. So I'm so happy you stopped translating, but because now you've shifted to planning because you get nervous about the grammar or you want to sound, express yourself clearly, which is great. Unfortunately, if you're planning in your head, you're not listening actively. If you're not listening actively, your body language isn't reacting to the conversation or to the situation appropriately. And that can have you be perceived as disinterested or whatever the situation might be. Maybe you won't connect as well. And really, you're just trying really hard to be able to respond well. So, what you do with this is you want to train breathing. The tip here is when other people's lips are moving, your lungs are breathing. Because you're thinking about the breathing, you're not planning in your head. And that eventually allows you to listen more actively. At this level, you have to trust yourself. Trust that you have enough English. You will be able to respond when you need it. So this is where the training, it sounds simple, but it takes a lot of practice. And that's what I'm here for, to push you. But you want to start with breathing. So that's the first thing I want you to do. So this week, in fact, today, don't even worry about implementing it. Like, watch this video again so you know those moments that I want you to do, but at least observe your breathing. I want you to observe and notice how often you don't breathe. Non-native speakers fall into the habit of holding their breath because, in a way, you do it so you can listen better. Unfortunately, when you hold your breath, your heart rate accelerates and your body starts feeling anxiety, whether it's because of the physiological depriving yourself of oxygen or because you actually feel anxious or both, then that's going to impact your fluency and your confidence. So just observe, when are you holding your breath? Are you not breathing when other people are talking to you? Do you stop breathing when you're listening to a podcast? Even notice when you're watching a show in English. How often do you stop breathing? So once you observe those moments, then you're able to fix that bad habit. Again, a big part of the training for you at this next level of English is identifying what are the problems, what are the root causes of that problem, and then how can we fix it most efficiently. So your first takeaway is observe your breathing. Now for the next one, this is a quote that I thought was really relevant from a podcast episode that said, simplifying it, especially in speaking, being able to say something in a simple way. This is what we talk about with the greatest communicators, is that they explain science or they explain technology in a very simple way. And this is wonderful. In this podcast episode, specifically, we were talking about those topics, or they were talking about those topics, but it really highlighted the American communication process. As Americans, we value being concise and being direct. Not so direct as other cultures. I don't want you to take it too far. There is a diplomatic approach to it, but in general, we appreciate the bottom line. And that's something that maybe maybe it's something you've become aware of, but you might not realize what you're doing and how that could be counterintuitive to what Americans are expecting. So the next tip is going to be about clarity. Now, this is something that's really important to know, that there's a difference in your training. For native speakers, they're also going to value confidence, clarity, and connection. But the reason I have this program specifically for non-native speakers is because with clarity, there are extra layers. Not only do you have to be more concise, but it's really important to figure out why you're not being concise right now. There are different reasons that happens, and we'll go over that right now. Also, pronunciation, intonation, rhythm. You might not know about connected speech. And so if you're not applying connected speech to your speaking, then you're going to sound more robotic. And if you sound robotic, you're not going to feel like yourself. And then that leads to a whole identity issue and messes with your confidence. For pronunciation, that's part of this program as well. Now, it's not a full pronunciation training, but there are going to be moments where your pronunciation might be causing confusion. So what I do is I analyze high frequency words. We identify what words are important to you and your daily speech and your industry, and let's make sure that you're pronouncing those clearly. And when you know that you're clear with that, you're going to be able to relax and speak more naturally. So the second tip for today has to do with the communication process. And so here I want to take a look at one of my the program alums. So, something he realized that this person came to me thinking that the problem was accent. They thought, you know what? I know I need to level up my English. I think accent and pronunciation is where I'm struggling. So, once he was in the program, though, he realized, yeah, there are a couple of sounds that could be improved, but really the problem was the communication style. And so here, something that he realized that is so important for you and that I like to coach is storytelling. The American way of storytelling might be different from how you communicate in your native language. And so this is something very important. And then once you understand that, then the next layer is okay, now that I know the cultural component, what am I doing and how can I do it better for my industry? So then we go into the storytelling style for example, he did a lot of public speaking to the company. So we had to strategize, how do you share updates about your department to other departments that don't have the same expertise? So that's a completely different style of simplification. So here, the method that I teach is simple. It's a triangle. This is what you're probably doing now. And what this means is you give more detail and then you get to the point. It might feel to you, you might see this and think, well, of course, I need to earn trust by giving the details and the process, and then I can get to the end. That's not the way Americans communicate. So, again, your heart's in the right place. You want to, maybe it's about transparency or this is your way of establishing trust. Unfortunately, when you use this process with Americans, it actually has the opposite effect. They start doubting, like, why is this person not answering the question? That might feel suspicious. Or why is this person giving all this extra detail that's not needed? Maybe they didn't do it correctly or they're insecure. And it kills me because I know, first of all, you got that position for a reason. And I know that you're good at what you do, but you're hurting your reputation about your expertise by communicating in that way. And I find, for example, Latin America communicates like this. I always tell my Latin American clients, I'm like, you take me on the journey and then we get to the destination. Unfortunately, that's not what we want in American English. And so the reason that you're doing this is because that's the cultural expectation. And there are other cultures, for example, I'm trying to think of other clients that do this. Um, French, Italian, you take it through a journey. Now, that's one of the reasons you might do that. The other reason, even if you're from a culture that doesn't value that style, I find non-native speakers will give more detail at first because they're trying to prove their English and they're trying to give enough context in case they're misunderstood. And again, unfortunately, you actually make people feel less confident about your expertise by doing this. So instead of increasing trust, you're decreasing it. So now that you know the two reasons, or maybe both, of why you're doing this, then we're going to flip it. So again, Americans value getting to the point. And this also happens with casual conversations. So if you listen to the most recent podcast episode, I was talking to a Brazilian who now lives in the US. And I trained her because whenever she would answer a question, it would take a long time to answer the question. Like, even if it's something simple, like, what time is the party? Instead of saying 2 o'clock, I feel like culturally it was more, oh, yeah, the party's going to be great. And my mom made the cake and we're going to have this and like the kids and this, da, 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 da. And then maybe either forget about saying the time and answering the question or doing it at the end. Unfortunately, that is really frustrating. And so Americans won't understand what's going on. So even in casual conversations, answer the question directly first. And then if they need it or if you want to share, give more detail. So you want to get to the point. Take a breath. Oh, I'm giving you a lot. And this can be jarring because you might think, oh my goodness, I have been doing this the wrong way for so long. Like, I wonder what people think of me. No, instead, let's work on your mindset. I want you to realize I have successfully communicated in English up until this point, and now I can communicate better. So don't shame your past. Instead, be excited about your future. Now you're learning things that you didn't know before, and those are going to help you feel even more confident. Now, what's different about this training is, again, you're learning the cultural reasons why you might be communicating I don't want to say wrong, but like you're communicating in a way that's not as effective. So now you understand why. And with this training, because you're a non native speaker, I also help you figure out how to do it. It's not how to do it. There are certain phrases that native speakers know just from being native speakers that you don't. So it's really important for me to give you a way that you can get out of that, because there will be times where where you get lost, where you don't communicate effectively because you're human. It happens to me. We use these expressions all the time. So it's really important for you to build your English in a way that you have the phrases you can use, that if you notice, like, oh, I'm doing it again, I'm over explaining, you just pause and you say, you know what? To make a long story short, the point is blank. So when you have the language, because that's the frustrating part, sometimes you're told what the problem is and the solution is just, get to the point, but there's a linguistic barrier that causes insecurity. And that's what I make sure that you have. What are those language moments that you need to be able to successfully communicate? And so these phrases are wonderful. So your second goal for today is to get to the point. And really, and this is going to take some time for you to feel more comfortable with this. So, kind of do what we did with breathing. You have the information you need about the breathing, but really you want to start with just being observant. So, maybe for this week, observe how often you over explain or you don't get to the point. Just understanding the moments that you do it, then that creates awareness and mindfulness. And then you'll be able to catch yourself and use the phrases like this to kind of get yourself back on track. And then eventually you start just communicating directly and you don't need those phrases as much. So, next, last but not least, we want to talk about connection. So, in order to increase your executive presence and improve your leadership communication, this is what's different from academic English and real life English. I find that when you're training, like the academic approach, it's really about you communicating and you getting the language, the verbs, the structure. And that's fine. Like, I think it could be better, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, the focus is not as much on, it's more on speaking than conversing and communicating. When you're connecting through communication, that's a whole different process. There's so much more involved. It's not just what am I going to say? It's what are they saying? How are they saying it? How do I want this conversation to move forward? And this can be really intimidating because when you realize you don't have that skill and you're already in these positions, it's like, oh, should I know this by now? Because it seems simple, but it's not. And here I really want to stress, like, this is a quote from the BBC, just how beautiful it is that you know a language that is so global. English has become the default language for business. Whether you like that or not, again, it is what it is, but let's use it in an empowering way. If you're here, you're already advanced. You're already working in an English world. How cool is it that you have the language where your career is global? And if you're missing out on the connection, you're also missing out on growing your career, on growing your impact. So I want you to take this as a good thing of, oh, you're already a step ahead. You have that second, or in some case, third or fourth language that allows you to have this amazing global opportunity. So here, and again, most people that come to me thinking I need to sound more like a native speaker. I need to pronounce things better. And like I said, pronunciation is important. Accent reduction, I prefer thinking of it as accent clarification for the purpose of communication. So it's more about where is it causing confusion. However, the once you realize that what you're missing is communication, it's so empowering. So this is another client of mine, and when he accepted the training and let me push him harder and realized that connecting with the audience and communicating clearly was the game changer, it in fact changed the game. He became so much more confident. He was able to get his dream job at the dream company. He's doing podcasts and he's doing public speaking and going up to conferences representing the company. I mean, the doors that this opened for him in being open to learning how to connect with people was amazing. So again, you have enough English. So the reason I do this kind of training is because we take the English that you have and then we start talking about strategy and communication. And the whole goal of that is to connect, whether it's to make more friends, which is wonderful. But of course, you're not going to be in this program just to make friends. This is about connecting with people on a business level as well. It increases your network, it increases your opportunities, it decreases anxiety because you're not freaking out every time you have to go to a conference. It's amazing. So, the biggest thing that I find is the obstacle is this resistance or this anxiety about small talk. And I get it. Native speakers struggle with small talk. Again, it goes beyond the language. This is about the strategy. So today I'm going to give you some tips that are going to help you hopefully immediately be able to break through and have more confidence. Now, here you'll notice the first tip is breathing. This is the thing we did at the beginning of the webinar. And the reason that is because everything that I coach, it builds on each other because that gives you exponential results. I don't want just a linear, small process. I want everything that I do for you to give you the tools to have results you couldn't even imagine and build habits that allow you to keep growing even after the program. And you'll see that here, even after the webinar, you're going to keep growing because of what you're implementing. So you're going to breathe more. Now, when you breathe more, when you're having these small talk opportunities, that allows you to listen actively. So again, we're doing all the things we did at the beginning, but now we're applying it in this micro situation of small talk. So you're breathing, you're feeling calmer, you're not planning in your head, so you're listening actively. Everything I teach you is for a purpose. Now that you're in the moment, you can be curious. Because you're listening actively, you're really appreciating what's being said in the conversation. You can be curious about it. And the reason I focus on this is because there's a lot of pressure when I work with clients that they get nervous of what am I supposed to talk about? I don't know what to talk about next. I don't know what's appropriate. I don't want to cross boundaries. And I love that consideration. So when you're curious, that means that you're asking questions about what they've already mentioned. And if someone already mentioned the topic, then to me, that means they've put it out there. And so it's appropriate. So this is why I recommend, don't ask people about their marital status. Like, are you married? Are you not? Asking me if they have kids. Do you have any children? Don't ask that because there are lots of reasons why I don't think that's an appropriate question. Like, it's not horrible, but we're here to be better. So the reason I say don't, wait until they say something. If they say, this is where you're curious and you're listening. If they say, oh, I took my son to his baseball game last weekend, then that means that talking about or asking about their family is appropriate. Then you can say, oh, how old is your son? Do you have any other kids? So once they've made a topic safe and appropriate, then you can ask. But you won't pick up on those cues if you're nervous and you're not listening actively. So then you miss out on all that context. And what this does is it also allows you to not have the pressure of having to come up with the topics. You'll get there. There'll come a point where you'll be able to bring up topics. Until you get to that point, I want you to feel success. You can ask questions about things that they've already brought up. And next is keeping it simple. Something I just worked on with a client last week. She was working on being curious. However, so we got to the active listening, so exciting. That's a big breakthrough. But then when she was being curious, she was asking so many follow-up questions that it was overwhelming. You want to keep it simple. So if somebody said, I took my son to a baseball game, don't say like, oh, you have a son? How many kids do you have? Do they like baseball? Do they also like basketball? The other person's not going to know what to answer. And American conversation is like tennis. The rhythm, it's like little back and forth. And so that can be different because again, like you want to examine your culture. Other cultures that's not the same conversational pattern, but that's something we go deeper in the program. So here you want to make sure if you do follow up with a question, keep it grammatically simple and keep it simple in terms of just do one question. Make it easy for them to respond and to be engaged. Now you have these steps. Another technique that I love coaching is just repeating the last few words. This is something that's typically coached when you're studying negotiation. But when I was studying it for that, I realized that this is the perfect technique for non-native speakers because you don't have to worry about the grammar. You just have to focus on listening actively. And when you do this with Americans, it's like our way of you're telling them that you're interested and that you want them to keep going. So it's a really nice way to help people feel that you're interested and you're connecting with them. And what this looks like, for example, even if we take the same context of you're at a conference and someone's talking about their child. Oh, I took my kid to a baseball game last weekend. Oh, a baseball game? All you have to do is repeat the part that interests you and do it with a question inflection. The person's going to hear that and think, oh, yeah, my son loves baseball and their favorite team is blah, blah, blah. It's such an easy linguistic way to engage in small talk, to make connections, and to keep the conversation going so you don't feel those awkward pauses, especially at the beginning when you first meet someone. You want it to feel natural. So this is just beautiful. So now you know everything that we did earlier in this webinar builds up and will also help you with small talk. Now, small talk is essential because especially, I know people usually when I coach, they hate those moments of when you have a few minutes before a video call, for example. You're just awkwardly there with the client or with the team. You don't know what to say. If you use these strategies, if you engage, it is a game changer because if what that does is it establishes trust. What people sometimes don't realize, or maybe you realize it, but you don't appreciate it fully, a random conversation where you find out that someone, let's say, likes skiing, and then like you go on to the conference and whatnot. But then later on, you see this great article or thing on Instagram about a new ski resort in Colorado where they like to ski. Then you can text them and say, oh, I saw this new resort. Just wanted to send it because I thought it made me think of you. Those random connections are going to build, it's such a big deal in building trust. And when you have that, those are the people who you end up closing the deal. Those are the people who then end up giving you a promotion. At this level, opportunities are not given to the most qualified. It's not. We would like to think we live in a meritocracy, but the truth is people with connections get more opportunities. And so whether you like that truth or not, I like to coach it in a way where you feel the most authentic. How can you connect with people in a genuine way through genuine interests? So where there's an authentic connection, and then that builds and you're able to, especially if you do this before a meeting or a presentation, because I also coach this for when I work with people who do pitches a lot. I'm like, use those 5-10 minutes before the meeting, have that small talk connection, because then you feel less pressure when you're presenting. You're presenting to someone you know better. And so you're more relaxed and you feel more empowered to make it a more interactive presentation instead of boring, just kind of one directional. And so that's going to increase the quality of your presentation. You're going to connect with them. They're going to give you more information that allows you to pitch to them. They trust you more. They like you more. So these are really important moments that allow you to increase your professionalism in an authentic way. Because really, and everything I do is about finding your voice. It's about who are you? I'm not going to coach you to be someone that you don't want to be. We find out what are your motivations? What does executive presence mean to you? What kind of personality do you want to make sure that you're exuding in English? Because when you're a non-native speaker, a lot of times you don't feel like yourself in English. Maybe you're more robotic or you're colder because of all these insecurities. So a big part of this is what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of human do you want to be? And how do we use language to help you be that most effectively? So here you have your small talk tips, and all of those, they really translate to being in the moment. So that's your third takeaway. And if you look here, think about it. Breathing increases mindfulness. Active listening, you're in the moment. Being curious, you have to be in the moment to hear their interest, to ask about them. Keeping it simple, you're in the moment because you want them to feel comfortable answering a simple question. Repeating the last few words, you have to, everything is about being in the moment. And this is really challenging and takes a lot of practice for a non-native speaker. In fact, one of the people that took the program this summer, it was really interesting because He was taking a yoga program at the same time. And that kind of mindfulness training, realizing he could apply that to his language and to his conversation and communication was great. And this is where I like to use a multidisciplinary approach. How do we take other skills that we have and help them help us be a better communicator? So being in the moment. Oh, it's very powerful, very simple, but simple, as you know, doesn't mean easy. So overall, the 3 takeaways I want you to have from today's training: observe your breathing. And if you want, write these down. If you sign up for the webinar, I'll send you an email with all of this after. Observe your breathing. You're going to notice how often you don't breathe. That's your first realization. And then you start implementing breathing actively. Getting to the point. Stop giving details first. Give the answer first, give the point first, and then if they want more, give them more. This applies to casual conversation as well as professional. And especially as a leader. As a leader, when you give too many details at first, it just doesn't come across as professional. It comes across as why this person knows. Being able to simplify information is really key as a leader, because you know more than most of the people. And even if maybe not on a technical level, but from a strategic level and where you want them to take the action, simplifying is a big part of effective leadership. And last but not least, be in the moment. Stop planning. Stop trying to do all these other things at the same time. I know it's hard, but if you were able, you remember, you used to translate before you could speak in English. It's translate in your head. You were able to break that habit. You can also break this habit. It takes time and work, but you got this. Now, here I want to show you one of the reasons that I am so passionate about this. And this quote just exemplifies it so frustratingly and beautifully. So here, according to Harvard Business Review, the unaccented speakers were on average 23% likelier to have gotten funding. This makes me rage. And the reason is it's a sad truth, but I also think this is oversimplified. And for non-native speakers reading this kind of information, it's so demoralizing. I mean, it's awful. So this is one of the reasons that I do this kind of training, because it's not the accent that's the problem. Yes, maybe some of it is accent bias and prejudice, but I've worked with, this was about startups and funding and pitching. I've worked with this for almost 20 years. I know that it's not your accent. It's when the accent is so strong and the communication style is too tied to your native language that it's not effective communication. It's not the accent. There are certain words where the accent, the pronunciation might be the issue, but that's not as hard of a fix as you think. It's about identifying high frequency words. But it's because when non-native speakers are pitching, I've trained enough pitches to know you're so worried about your English. You're so robotic. You're so tense that you're not connecting with the people that you need funding from. And so this has financial consequences, but this is also, in general, you're not connecting with people and you're not communicating effectively. So this is why I do what I do. And for me, empathy and experience play a huge part into that. So just so you know a little bit about me, my background is in communication and in education, but I'm also Mexican American and I grew up in New Orleans. And in New Orleans is part of the Southeast. So just so you know, if you're not aware of regional differences, the South has a Southern accent. And so when I coach, I use a standard American accent because I find that that's helpful. But part of it's because I became aware of the impact an accent can have on your opportunities. So not only was I aware of the Southern accent, and the reason is I wanted to be a journalist and I knew that you needed the standard accent in order to have national opportunities. So that was one. But also, I'm first generation Mexican. So I also saw a lot of prejudice and a lot of just tough situations with the community that I was in when they spoke and they had an accent. And so for me, it just became this like, no, I will not let anyone not get what they want and what they deserve through hard work just because of the way they speak. And so that to me just like fueled that fire. And then through experience of doing focusing on business, I worked in public relations and really understanding the power of persuasion and getting to the point. That's what allowed me to create this kind of training. So here, speaking of accent, this is this testimonial means so much to me because I worked with this person who he did a lot of public speaking. And so again, came to me thinking that accent was the issue, but what it really was about communication and how could he connect with the audience and deliver these amazing speeches at conferences, specifically in tech. But when he realized he just had to own his accent, we worked on, of course, it being clear because there's some moments where it does matter. But the confidence that you get when you realize that doesn't have to be what stops you. It's so rewarding for me and hopefully for you, inspiring that you're so much more than your accent. And that's what I want you to feel. And I want you to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. And when you get over those insecurities and you start focusing on communication training, it's awesome. So, I wanted to give you a little insight on the breakdown of the program. You kind of know the three sections already. So, this is a 3-month program because I want to make sure you get results fast. And the three sections that we focus on are building your executive presence, which really means understanding how to be confident in English, and then effective communication training. Now, we have some general topics, but really it's about you. Everything I do is bespoke, even though there's a group component to it, or if you choose a group program, there's also times when I coach you individually, and it's about what are you communicating. Some people are in the program because they want to be better presenters and do public speaking. Other people are in the program because they have to present to their team and they really need action being taken. So, whatever your reason is, there's always a moment where we make sure it's the communication you need, not general, not theory. And last but not least, building trust and increasing impact, because that's what connection is. A lot of people get resistant when we talk about networking or building network. But if you do it in a way that's true to you, if you build trust in a way that's authentic to your goals and your heart, then you're going to do it with so much more confidence. And so that's really important to me. And also how to not be afraid of opportunities. So many people are afraid of LinkedIn because they're afraid of the English, but I'm going to be there to push you and to show you how to do it correctly so you know that the quality of your work is good, but also authentically. And these are some of the components of the program. You're going to get bespoke coaching. Again, it's not just theory, it's about what you need. These are 3 intensive months. So I want to make sure that you get everything to make sure that you elevate your leadership communication. Accountability is a big part. I'm not going to let you sneak away and not do it. This is not just about getting money. This is about making sure you get results. So a big part of it is I will text you. I will say, okay, I need you to do this. Everything has like, there's a checklist, there's a program, there's a note document that you get where you fill in things when you watch the trainings. I go in there and I look at them and I see what you're writing and I help you extrapolate the value even more. And then on-demand virtual resources, it's a lot of flexibility. There are certain things that we do at certain times, but other components of it are really there to fit your schedule. Maybe you have more time on the weekends. Maybe you prefer doing 20 minutes a day. We find the best way to fit your schedule. Professional feedback, this is what I'm there for. You're not just learning and doing, because then if you do it and you don't get feedback, you don't know if you're improving. Like you're probably improving a little bit, but you're not getting the most out of it. So everything that we do, I'm there to break it down, analyze it, and give you not only feedback, but also how to improve it. It's not just like you did this wrong. It's this is not as effective. This is how you can do it. This is how you train that. Curated learning experience. I'm taking 20 years of experience and putting it into really concise 3 months where I know you're going to get what you need. An accelerated growth plan, like I said before, everything I do builds on each other because I want exponential growth. So this is something that I also, when you leave the program, you leave with the skills and the habits and the resources to continue growing. Because in my opinion, I always say this, it's kind of morbid, but you don't stop growing, you don't stop improving your English. Like none of us stop improving until we die. So we're not going to rush towards the finish line. There's no like, I'm done studying English. No, you just evolve. So if you see it as an evolution, I find that that's a lot more productive. Now, the results that you're going to feel, oh, so good. I get so excited. With this program, you're going to feel more confident and assertive. And assertive is really important because you work in high pressure situations. If you remember the testimonial from the beginning where she was able to speak up in meetings, um, that's just one of the things she was able to do. I mean, the results that she's had have been amazing. Being able to speak to community leaders, to politicians, being able to really stand up for her program that she needs funding for, to be assertive. And if someone's being rude, I'll teach you how to deal with those moments, the language that you need, and how to maintain your professionalism. It's the confidence that you don't have to know everything, but you know you can deal with anything. It's amazing. The other result is to think faster and express yourself concisely. Through this program, it really is a lot about, like you saw today, right? It's about training how you process information so that you're more efficient. You're able to come up with what you want to say faster with less anxiety, less pressure, and then get to the point first, right? Like find the most effective way to communicate it. You're going to connect with people authentically. This is so rewarding because English is a global language, and yet you're limiting the amount of people that you're connecting with because of certain fears and insecurities, or maybe just a lack of skills. So now you're going to be able to go to conferences and not just attend them, you're going to make connections. This was fantastic. I had a client who just his company wanted to send them to the US and to Spain for conferences, but he just kept saying no because he knew it was all in English. And after our training, he said yes more, and which is the last thing here. And he started going to these conferences. And so we were trained really hard on how do you connect with people naturally? How do you have these conversations? And now he's made friendships in his industry from all over the world. And that's led to just not only good business connections, but this is long term, right? You never know when you're going to need something or somebody else might. This is when maybe you're looking for a job one day or you're not getting the promotion that you want. Somebody else might have an opportunity for you. And now he looks forward to going to these conferences every year because he knows people and he's not afraid of meeting new people. So it's really just a game changer. And then you're also going to lead more effectively. When you don't have the language and you're over explaining, it can cause confusion, it can cause doubt in your expertise. You're not going to get the results you need for your company. So this is going to help you also increase your leadership skills. And saying yes. Think of how many times you say no. If someone says post more on LinkedIn, you're like, no. If someone says, I want you to be on a podcast, ooh, no. I want to interview you on a network. Mm-mm. I want you, you should go to this conference or you should present at this conference. And you're like, no, I'm too busy. All of these things that you're saying no to, you're going to have the confidence to say yes to. And this is something that I love also with the program is a lot of it's individual assignments so that if you know that you want to, for example, be on a podcast, I'll help you train that. I'll find the questions for you to train, have you practice, give you feedback. If you know you want to present at a conference, then you use the program and through those moments where I give you personal feedback, let's do your conference speech. Let's get that together, let's practice it, get feedback. So these are moments where you're going to learn a lot of leadership communication, but it's also going to tie into the goals that you have. And that makes it so much more valuable. Because as here you see this client who really felt that it wasn't just about English, it wasn't even just about communication. You're not here if you wanted just to have English, that would be a different program. You're here because this is about your life, right? This is your moneymaker. This is your profession. This is your business. This is what sustains you. This is what fuels you. And so to learn how to do business in the US or how to do business with Americans or using American English, it's a big deal. The impacts are so worth it. So when you're thinking about making that investment, you want to think about, oh, what does this yield? This investment now is going to allow me a very lucrative future and being able to take advantage of opportunities and make more money. Because at the end of the day, leadership, you're not just doing it for mentoring for goodwill, that's mentorship. When you're a leader, it's also about creating revenue. It's about success, financial success, professional success. And this is what this kind of training is for. Also, if you're thinking, I'm not sure, that's fine. If you've tried courses, books, and programs, You've probably already spent money on resources. So you want to think about what has worked for you and what hasn't. And if that hasn't worked for you, or I find most people that come to me have tried these things and it just hasn't pushed them far enough. So it's not that these programs weren't good enough, it just didn't give them that extra step. And a lot of times it's because it wasn't that combination of business and leadership and English communication strategy. And so, I always feel like I take money very seriously. You want to be cautious about where you invest. So you want to make sure that it's something that works for you. So, speaking of cost, what is this costing you? If you're constantly anxious, that affects your mental health. If you're I mean, I've worked with people who I remember I had a client who had just gotten a promotion from uh, being an executive in her native language, and then the company merged. And so now she had this C suite position for the global version of the company. And she had to present to the executive board in English. The amount of anxiety that caused her, waking up anxious, having a hard time sleeping because of the anxiety and fear, just feeling that, like sickness. And through the training, seeing her be able to sleep better, and the better you sleep, then you wake up and you're able to kind of work through that and feel less anxious. Knowing that she didn't have that fear anymore was a huge change in quality of life. Effective leadership. What is this costing you? If you're not an effective leader, how many thousands or millions of dollars is that costing your company? If you're not growing your business the way that you need to, let's say I do work with a lot of people who are in that transition phase where the companies have gone global or they're expanding. If you're in a leadership position and you're not being effective, you're costing your company millions. And that, again, you want to think about the investment versus the consequence of not doing it. And then career growth. Are you keeping your career small? Are you not getting the promotions that you want? Are you not open to other opportunities? Are you not being the voice in your field because your voice in English causes you fear? Are you avoiding going to conferences and presenting and really sharing your knowledge with the world and being that person that I believe you deserve to be, and sharing your knowledge because you're nervous? I'm here for that. Now, this is not a program for everyone. Not only that, but I don't take everyone. There is an application process. It's very selective. I try to keep this program small so that everybody gets really high quality attention. So this is not for you if you just want to learn and you don't want to implement solutions. And what I mean by that is a lot of people are really comfortable with just learning. You want theory, you want knowledge, you want memorization. This program is not that at all. It is all about action, getting you to speak. Like the assignments that I talk about, the submissions, they're not written. None of this is about how much you know. It's literally like record yourself giving your presentation and send it to me. Record yourself having this conversation, record your meeting. I want to see you in action so that I can help you speak better. So this is not for you if you just want more information. This is also not for you if you don't want personal, actionable feedback. Some people don't take feedback well. If you don't like being critiqued, if you don't like being told specifically what you're not doing effectively and how to do it better, then don't join, don't even apply. Because a big part of this, I'm very direct. I'm very, ask anybody who's worked with me. I'm going to hone in on what the weakness is and then give you feedback, strategy, practice, and we're going to work through it. That means a certain level of vulnerability and a certain level of being okay with me, with your ego being hurt a little bit. But the benefit is you'll become a better version of yourself. But again, that's not for everyone. If that's not the style that you like, this is not the program for you. And if you're too busy to do the work, I don't want you to apply for this program and get in and then not show up. I don't want you to apply, get in, and then not do the work, because if you don't get results, then there's no point. So it does take a certain amount of dedication. If you're too busy, then this is not the moment for you. When you're willing to make that time, and again, this is also a flexible program. We make it work with you. But if you're just not in that mindset yet, that's okay. Not for you. Now, this is for you if you're ready to look, feel, and sound confident in English. If you're frustrated, if you know you could be better, but you don't know how to be better, because at this point, you're already at a high level. So that can be frustrating, because when your English is good, if you go to English teachers, they'll tell you like, oh yeah, like your level is good enough, you're fine. That's where the communication coaching is different than English teaching. And so this is that next level. This is for you if you're ready to work smarter and not harder. And what I mean by that, something that's really serious, I'm going to make myself full screen. When you're in this 3-month program, for those 3 months, I don't want you to use any other resources. I had a client from the last cohort ask me like, should I also like watch other YouTube videos? Should I watch your other videos? Should I do other like all the other things that you have available? I said, no. For these 3 months, you're only going to use the videos that I give you. And even then, there's like a whole set of pronunciation videos. You're not going to do all of them. You're only going to do the ones that I think are good for you and beneficial. This is about working smarter, not harder. It's not about being overwhelmed with all the resources. It's very much do what I tell you when I tell you, and we're going to do this well. So if you're willing, because I find that a lot of people at this level are so used to, you're all overachievers. You're all doing so much that it can be hard to be told, do less and do it more intensely. But if you trust that process, if you trust these results that I've shared with you, it is a game changer. And this is also for you if you want results fast. This program could be a year, but I really want you to get the results and feel confident sooner. So this is 3 months. Every week you're going to feel better about yourself. Every week, like I said, everything builds on each other, on itself. So if you want that, if you're ready for that, and the reason I say that is some people, maybe they're more comfortable with longer results or they have a 5-year plan. But if you know, for example, if you start in November, if you're ready, like I want to end this year strong and I want to start 2025 ready for it, this is for you. Now, this is what the path looks like. So when you sign up, when you apply, if you make it into the program, if you're selected, we have a strategy session. We go through all the different pillars of the program, and the goal is to lead confidently in English. But the first step before you get to all this is to apply. So make sure that if you sign up for this webinar, I'm going to email you the link. You can go to my website. Make sure you get that application call because, again, it's a selection process. This is not a program for everyone. Not everyone makes it through. So I want to make sure that we get you in early so that you know if you're in or not. Remember, if you do nothing else, focus on the 3 takeaways. You're going to get this video again. If you signed up for it, I'm going to send you the replay. Watch it again. I find that the more I watch something, the more I'm able to ingest it and then apply it. This is not about memorizing or learning. This is about communicating, which involves you opening your mouth. So I want you to feel empowered to try these tips in the next conversations that you have. You're going to feel better. At first, it might be a little frustrating when you realize, like, oh man, I really don't breathe enough. Or, why am I freezing so much? But awareness allows you to then pinpoint the moments where you're going to work on to improve. Thank you so much again. And make sure that you apply at tanyasuarez.com/leadership.